right, imagine a world in which you own nothing and rent everything. Most of the protein in your diet comes from bugs. You're not allowed to have more than one child, and your financial and medical data are instantly transferred to a centralized government database via a subdermal microchip. What a frightening scenario. But could this actually turn into a nightmare of reality? Well, there are some people who are certainly working to make that happen. And joining me now to discuss this is Seamus Bruner. He's the author of a recently released book entitled Controligarchs, Exposing the Billionaire Class, Their Secret Deals, and the Globalist Plot to Dominate Your Life. He's also the Associate Director of Research at the Government Accountability Institute. Seamus, welcome back to Washington Watch. Great to have you.
Hey, Jody, it's great to be with you.
All right. Well, listen, I love the title of your book, by the way. So let's just start there. Define for us what exactly is a controligarch.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, they're the oligarchs, the extremely wealthy, unfathomably wealthy individuals. But we don't have a problem with wealthy individuals. I mean, capitalism is a great system. The problem is these folks want to upend capitalism, and they want to control every aspect of your life. I mean, I'll give you an example. The energy industry, they are right now trying to implement and succeeding in putting in these green technologies that are going to make your life a whole lot worse. For example, imagine waking up in the middle of the night. It's winter now, and you're shivering, you're cold. You go to the thermostat, you try to turn on the heat, but you can't. You've been locked out. You've got no control over your thermostat. Now, that may sound like a dystopian future, far away science fiction. Just ask the residents of Colorado, Texas, and California who have all been locked out of their so-called smart thermostats. And so men like Jeff Bezos with his Alexa and Amazon home thermostat smart systems and the Google Nest, they're all working on this technology. It's already here.
Yeah, I've been seeing so much of this type of thing, and I'm so grateful that you've done the research and now you've put all this together for us in a book. But one of the things that I've been looking and seeing a lot of articles on is the issue of obviously human survival is based upon food, and yet we have Microsoft founder Bill Gates has spent close to $12 billion in some sort of food takeover scheme, it appears. Is this part of what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, it's all done under the guise of saving the planet. It's, quite an ambitious goal. But what we found is that Bill Gates has dusted off an old Microsoft strategy from the 90s called Embrace, Extend, Extinguish. Microsoft used that to corner various industries, the internet browser industry, for example. And so how it works is like this. Bill Gates enters into a market, the agriculture and food protein market. He, embraces the standards of the time, acts like he's not making too many waves. He then extends his reach, buys up more and more farmland, buys up more and more companies that are making these fake meats like Beyond Meat, Impossible Foods. And then comes the extinguish phase. And you can just ask any farmer today if the climate change regulations that are coming down the pike are going to put them out of business or not. It already has put a lot of farmers out of business. And they say that it's about sustainability. Bill Gates makes it sound like this is all about sustainability. What it's really about is using his patented technologies. He's got these fertilizers that have got, that are too expensive than the traditional fertilizers. And it's about putting out of business his competition. That would be the smallholder, family-owned farms.
Wow. All right. So we have the energy sector. We've got the food sector. Somewhere has got to be in the middle of all of this. George Soros, his family, his name comes up all the time. I know he's been heavily involved in the election, shall we call it interference industry, shall we say? Tell us about that.
Yeah, certainly. So we were a little skeptical whether George Soros might even make it through the publication of this book. He is 93 and he's getting pretty up there in years. Unfortunately, we found that he's got 5 kids one of whom some of your viewers may be familiar with, Alexander Soros. Each of them is more radical than the last. Now, Alexander Soros has just assumed control of his father's $25 billion dark money fortune. And Alex Soros has said that he is going to be funding causes like abortion and election integrity. Interference is a better term for it, as you said, but he'll be funding elections for the next 50 years if he lives to the age of his father.
It's startling. It's frightening, really, to think at the enormous amount of control and power these billionaires have, and that they all seem to be on the wrong side of the issues. I'm sure behind it all is more power, more control, more money. But underneath all of this, Seamus, isn't the whole effort to restrict information and to label anything that opposes them as misinformation, isn't this all part of the scheme as well?
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Jody. So information is probably one of the most important industries that these guys are trying to take control of and have taken control of in a lot of ways. I mean, everybody is familiar with the censorship industrial complex and getting deplatformed and shadow banned. A lot of people watching right now might have been shadow banned themselves just for telling the truth. But what most people aren't familiar with is where the information sector is going. And that's with this artificial intelligence. I mean, people have heard of ChatGPT and maybe OpenAI. Just last week, OpenAI fired its CEO, this guy named Sam Altman, and his vision for the future is quite alarming, and he just got scooped up. He wasn't unemployed for long. He got scooped up by Microsoft. Now he'll be working with the Microsoft engineers on how to bring about this dystopian reality where everybody's put out of work and various algorithms are doing your job for you. And the end goal of all of this is basically a socialist type system with universal basic income.
All right, let's go further into this. Americans are still, I think, trying to wade through and understand the effects of social media and the impact really that it has on our lives, particularly over, the first part of this millennium. We've seen it, but let's go to Facebook, all right? Mark Zuckerberg. He is trying to really add more influence to things like Facebook and some of these other technologies that the Meta user participates in. Kind of bring us up to speed on what is happening with Zuckerberg.
Sure. So since its very founding, and a lot, some viewers may have heard about this, since its very founding, Facebook has been an addiction-based business model. It addicts its users, everything from the color scheme of the app to the sound of the notification. It creates a process that, that floods your brain with effectively a drug called dopamine, and so that you get addicted to the rush of getting notifications. Now, attorneys general across the country, I think over 40 attorneys general have filed suit against Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, saying that this addiction-based business model is a problem. I mean, executives have said that Mark Zuckerberg knows that that's how his business works. Okay, now what are the effects of that? Well, it's not just that you're spending more time on social media. It has a lot of bad effects on you and your kids. Depression, even suicide studies have linked to extended use of social media. And so that's a big problem, of course. But then there's the censorship and, the locking down of information, especially around a critical time like an election. That's a huge problem. And then where Mark Zuckerberg is taking this addiction-based business model, according to the attorneys general, is he's making this kind of virtual reality. And a lot of people think that, oh, well, I'm never going to put the headset on and I'm never going to, do this and that, like in the virtual cyberspace. I'm going to avoid that. But kids are getting addicted to it. It's got, video game applications, but it's actually moving in towards an adult life where your job may be requiring you to attend meetings instead of via Zoom, via the metaverse. And once you get sucked in, you may never be able to get out.
So are these people working in cahoots with one another? I mean, we're talking about Zuckerberg, Bezos, Bill Gates, George Soros. Are they somehow working independently, or is there some sort of cooperation among them all to take over virtually every sector of our lives?
They're absolutely coordinating. I mean, they, in some ways they're competitors, in other ways they're allies and partners. The fifth guy on the cover that a lot of people haven't heard of, but really need to know who he is Klaus Schwab. He's the founder, CEO, chairman of the World Economic Forum. Now, some people have heard of Davos. Every year you kind of see the stories come up in January about all these wealthy folks who fly on their private jets to Switzerland to lecture us about climate change. But we tracked down every single document and white paper, and it's all very boring, and they kind of hide it in nice terms like sustainability and diversity and equity and inclusion. But what they're really working on and cooking up in Davos is the next scheme to control your life. And so, with the farms and the Bill Gates takeover, a lot of that is happening in Davos, where they say that you got to ban these certain types of fertilizers, or you need to go green by the year 2030. And then that gets rolled out to the politicians, who also go to Davos, where they kind of hobnob with the corporate elite, and then they roll out the policies that end up, when you hear about gas stove bans or gas vehicle bans coming to the U.S., California has announced a gas vehicle ban. That's all cooked up in Davos, and Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, George Soros, Jeff Bezos, they're all members of the World Economic Forum. They each deliver the keynote address at various times or speak on various subjects in the small working group meetings. And a lot of it's hidden from the press. And the last thing I'd say about it is you'll notice that none of these guys are elected. We never voted for Bill Gates. We didn't vote for George Soros. And because they're unelected, they're unaccountable. And so we don't have control over them. They've got control over us.
Wow. A great point. There's so much shocking information in this book, I'm sure, and we just don't have time right now, but I'm sure there were certain parts that were more shocking to you than others. But let's talk about, in the last minute or so that we have, our listeners, our viewers right now. Is there anything that can be done against these schemes that the woke, ultra-wealthy are trying to force on us?
Well, the number one thing you can do is arm yourself with the facts, with the truth, and spread the truth as far and as wide as you possibly can. I mean, what we see, because they always change the schemes and they change the branding. It used to be global cooling, then it became global warming, then it became climate change. And the same thing with Agenda 2030. It used to be Agenda 21. When the people learn what they're up to, they have to change, they have to recalculate, they have to try again another way. And so we just need to keep spreading the truth as far and as wide as possible.
All right, Seamus, where can people get a copy of your book?
Well, if you want to avoid Amazon, Jeff Bezos' website, you can go to Controligarchsbook.com. It's Controligarchs book.com.
All right, Controligarchs. Seamus Bruner, thank you so much for joining us on Washington Watch. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Jody.